Our scripture today is Ecclesiastes 11:9 through 12:1. Rejoice, young man, during your childhood, and let your heart be pleasant during the days of young manhood, and follow the impulses of your heart and the desires of your eyes. Yet know that God will bring you to judgment for all these things. So remove grief and anger from your heart, and put away pain from your body, because your childhood and the prime of life are fleeting. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come, and the years draw near when you will say, I have no delight in them.
Thanks, Greg. We are going to spend this Sunday and the next Sunday in Ecclesiastes, and then we'll be done with this book. We'll actually start in 10:16, so you can flip back there, and we'll march all the way through 12:8, which sounds like a lot, and it is, but we'll be all right, okay? On January 26, 1972, January 26, 1972, Vesna Volvalic was a flight attendant on a flight from Sweden to Serbia. She wasn't even supposed to be on that aircraft, but they had made a mistake and mixed up her name with another stewardess. As this flight flew over Czechoslovakia, the plane exploded into 3 pieces. When that explosion happened, Vesna was pinned down by a food cart in the back of that plane. And as the tail of the plane ripped away, she, with it, hurled towards the ground, falling 33,333 feet. That's over 6 miles. But by Providence, church, she landed on a snow-covered hillside at a favorable angle. Yes, she survived. Falling 6 miles, she survived, although she suffered a fractured skull, 2 broken legs, and 3 broken vertebrae. But providentially also, she was found by a former World War II medic who was able to give her first aid while help arrived. She ultimately regained the use of her legs and continued to fly sporadically. Quite the courageous one she is. And she now holds the Guinness World Record for the highest free fall. Amazing. Escaping death. Cheating death. Church, in Ecclesiastes, the preacher Solomon, he's helped us to examine life, a life in the world that he has described as under the sun, and he's used that phrase under the sun 28 times. See, one of the truths about this life under the sun is that we may momentarily escape death, but ultimately it comes for every person. What Solomon, the preacher, has exhorted us to is to find joy in our lot, God's way, God's world, living in his way, in his world, under the sun. He's going to give us 5 pieces of wisdom today as we navigate this life under the sun. He's going to tell us 5 points. Okay, ready? We are to rest, relinquish, rejoice, remove, and remember. Yeah, I know, a lot. We'll get through it, though. Okay? Rest, relinquish, rejoice, remove, and remember. Look at 10:16 with me. Solomon says there, "Woe to you, O land, when your king is a child, and your princes feast in the morning." So oftentimes, church, age is associated with wisdom in the scriptures. So when Solomon says, when your king is a child, what he's saying is when your king is unwise, when your king is foolish. And what's the result that he said for the land living under a foolish king? Woe to you. Woe. In other words, cursed is the land under a foolish king. But verse 17, the contrast, happy or blessed are you, O land, when your king is the son of nobility, and your princes feast at the proper time for strength and not for drunkenness. All right, so Solomon here has presented us two types of kings, two types of leaders, the wise and the foolish. And what's true in our life under the sun is that we will be under the rule and the power of both. And as I've said the past 4 weeks now, the king for the people of God was this symbol of oppression throughout their history. The ruler, this symbol of oppression as they awaited the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the Messiah who would come. And so in our life, what he's saying is that we will have days of adversity and days of prosperity. But he says in 18, look at it, through sloth or laziness, the roof sinks in. And through indolence, or that's inactivity, the house leaks. I love what Solomon does here. He takes us from the land under the ruler's care to the house under our care. And I think what he's getting at here is woe to the land because of the king's foolishness, but woe to your own house because of your foolishness. See, our house leaks not because of the king's laziness, he says. Our house leaks because of our own laziness. He's focusing our sight, church, in upon our own realm, upon our own lot that God's given us, upon our own life that God has given us. He's taking our eyes to our own lot and helping us to see the things that we should be joyful for. And so here's the principle. Overlooking your own house or your own life to focus on the foolishness of a ruler or a king's life is indeed foolish. It's foolish. Overlooking your own table to focus upon the foolishness of the king's table is foolish. He says in verse 19, look at it. Bread is for laughter, and wine gladdens life, and money answers everything. Okay, so bread's for laughter, wine gladdens life, and money answers everything. What he's saying there, when money answers everything, he's saying you could buy everything with money. Okay, so you can buy more bread and more drink. Here's the thing, you can't eat money for laughter, can you? And you can't drink coin for gladness, can you? No, money is this tool in our hands. And this is the point of verse 19. We can let our bread rot and our drink grow taint while we chase another dollar. And so we don't enjoy our own bread and our own drink that's on our table because we're too busy toiling for the ability to buy more bread and more drink. We are too busy toiling for someone else's lot. He says, therefore, in verse 20, even in your thoughts, do not curse the king, nor in your bedroom curse the rich. For a bird of the air will carry your voice, or some winged creature tell the matter. In other words, just cursing of the king or the rich, it's only going to make matters worse. And notice what he warns us, or where he warns us to not curse. Where is it? Where are we to not pronounce woe to the king and the rich? In our thoughts and in our bedroom. See that? You see, in your mind and under your covers, don't curse. Those two places where there is supposed to be peace and rest, peace of mind and rest of body. And so here's the principle in our first point. The wise seek rest. They seek rest. God has not given us, church, a mind to be filled with anxiety, nor a bed for tossing and turning. The progression of this text is the oppression and foolishness out there affecting the peace and joy in here. Right? We're seeing the problems out there invading our minds and our own lot. And so here's Solomon's point. The wise fix the leaking of their own home instead of cursing the leaking of the palace. Right? The wise feast with laughter and gladness at their own table instead of scowling at the foolish ruler's table. The wise can have peace of mind and rest in their own bed because they aren't so preoccupied overlooking their own lot to someone else's. It doesn't mean that we don't engage within the king's palace or the table, but we don't do it at the expense of our own house and our own table. Right? It's really easy. Can anyone testify to this? I know I can. It's really easy to let what is happening out there affect what's in here. Right? To become anxious about the things out there, forgetting that that lot is under God's rule as well. Right? It's really easy to let what's happening out there affect our own homes, our own table, our own mind, our own beds. We can lose rest because of this life under the sun. And so Solomon's saying, don't neglect your own lot. Find joy in it. Instead of losing rest, relinquish, which is our second point. Look at verses 1 and 2 of chapter 11. He says there, cast your bread upon the water, for you will find it after many days. Give a portion to 7 or even to 8, for you know not what disaster may happen on earth. There's a lot of debate about what's going on in these verses, but follow me here. Okay? He says to cast, or literally sow your bread or your grain upon the water. In other words, you have bread, you have grain that God's given you, and the wisdom is to send it out upon the waters. What he's saying here, to give to 7 or 8, it's another way of saying live generously, give generously what God has provided. And so our ability to relinquish the gifts that God has given to us reveals how much we trust God with our life. If you look at these verses, I think Solomon's referencing ancient sea trade here. Okay, so you would have your grain, you would raise your crop, you would take the grain that you need to make for your own bread, and then you would give it to another. You would place it under the rest and care of a merchant ship to go sell it and bring back your profit. That's what he's getting at here. And so you didn't even know when that ship would come back. It could be years before you see that ship again. And so what did you have to do in relinquishing the bread that God had given you? You had to trust the captain. Look at what he says in verses 3 and 4. If the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves on the earth. And if a tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where the tree falls, there it will lie. He who observes the wind will not sow or cast. He who regards the clouds will not reap. In other words, if you're watching the clouds trying to predict the best time to sow your bread upon the waters, you'll never sow your bread upon the waters. And if you never sow your bread upon the waters, then you'll never reap from sowing your bread upon the waters. Solomon is saying, live generously. Look at the lot that God has given you. Find joy in that lot and then generously live. Once again, he says, where trees fall, that's where it falls. And so in the context of living generously, of trusting God by relinquishing our gifts to him, where you are is where you are. This is what he's getting at. Your lot is your lot, so live generously with where you're at. And I'm not simply talking about money here. I'm talking about our time, our talent, our homes, our cars, all that we have within our lot. Relinquish it to the Lord to be used by him. I'm talking about the gifts and the provisions that God has given to us. Use them to extend his kingdom. Cast them onto the waters, not under some captain ship that we don't know, but under the captain of captains, Jesus, as the pilot of the vessel of your life. Trust in him, is what he's saying. Why? Because you don't know what God's going to do with your gifts. Or we can hold back from giving, from living for Christ because of this or that. But we don't know how he'll use them. Look at 5 and 6. As you do not know the way the Spirit comes to the bones in the womb of a woman with child, so you do not know the work of God who makes everything. The wisdom here is amazing. Right? There are many things we don't know. Right? We can understand the science behind how a baby forms in the womb, but we cannot figure out the miraculous nature of it. The formation of life at conception, the growing of that baby within the womb to birth. Or we don't understand, we don't know the miracle behind it. And his point is, you don't know what God will do with your generosity. How God will use it to impact not just others around you, but generations. And you don't know the type of life through the gospel that God will bring through the relinquishing of your gifts. And so in verse 6, he implores us, in the morning sow your seed, cast your grain. In the evening, withhold not your hand, for you do not know which will prosper, this or that, or whether both alike will be good. Right? The wise rest and the wise relinquish. And then third, the wise rejoice. The wise rejoice. Look at verse 7. Light is sweet, and it's pleasant for the eyes to see. So if a person lives many years, church, he's speaking to the older generation here, okay? If a person lives many years, let him rejoice in them all. All. Okay, older saints, can I talk to you for a second? Okay, you have seen more of God's work than those who are younger than you. You have had more opportunity to see God's power and his grace and his provision within your own life. You have seen God work out things and split seas when your backs have been against the wall. Right? Some of you have been married longer than I've been alive. And I really, really want to plead with you. Okay? Who's the older person? How old am I talking to? I don't know. Okay? If you think I'm talking to you, then I'm talking to you. Okay? Or you can look at your neighbor and ask, is he talking to me? Okay, this is how I want to plead with you from the Lord in verse 8. So if a person lives many years, let him rejoice in them all. Older saints, please lead us in rejoicing. Lead us in rejoicing. Model for us what it means to rejoice in the Lord always. Be the pace car of joy in this church. And so I know that the world right now is different than it was in the past. But we need your light and your hope, not your despair. We need you to point us to Jesus and the hope that he provides for us, that he gives, that only he can give. Or we need you to remind us of the truth that we don't know the work of God who makes everything, what he'll do through us living generously, giving our lives to the Lord, hoping in the Lord. And so if a person lives many years, let him rejoice in them all. But let him remember that the days of darkness, Solomon says, will be many. Right? All that comes is vanity. Okay, so these days of darkness are many, he says. That life holds many dark days and many days of adversity. Why? Because the more you live, the more you experience life under the sun. Right? Older generation, can you not testify to the many dark days that you have had to endure? If you live long enough, then I'm sure that you can look back over your life and see that very thing to be true. But the second point, that the dark days are many, does not negate the first point, to rejoice in all the years that God gives you. How? Because the longer you live, the more you see the character of God living in your life. How he has brought you through difficulty. The more you could see God's faithfulness through the difficulty, God's faithfulness in all your days under the sun, good and bad. And so remind every younger person by the way you live, by the way you smile, by the way that you talk, that there is joy that the Lord provides in your lot if you just place your eyes over the sun upon Him. And now he's going to change to those younger in verse 9. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes, but know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment. All right, so those who are young in here, he says to you also, rejoice, find joy. Rejoice in what? This is awesome. That you're young. Right? Rejoice that you can't hurt yourself sleeping. Rejoice by living life in all the ways that you can. But remember that God will bring your life into judgment. In other words, sow the right oats. Don't sow the wild ones that will only produce thorns and thistles. Give your life, cast your seed upon the water, your produce upon the water. Produce fruit, not thorns and thistles. And so to us all, Solomon says, rejoice in your lot. And so the wise rest, they relinquish, they rejoice, and forth they remove. Verse 10. Remove vexation, the ESV says. That's frustration or worry or annoyance from your what? Heart. And put away pain. Pain that literally translates to evil or sin. Put that away from your body. For youth and the dawn of life are vanity. So Solomon's exhortation is to remove what's clogging your joy. Remove anxiety and stress and fear and bitterness and resentment and grudges. Put away the sin that is causing pain in your life. And so here's the question for all of us. What needs to be removed from your life today? What do you need to leave at the feet of Jesus? What sin do you need to repent of today? Or to confess to one another today? Right? Remove it, Solomon says. Put it away. Jesus said that he came to give life and to give it abundantly. Remove vexation from your life. Remove what's clogging your joy. And fifth, and finally, the wise rest, they relinquish, they rejoice, they remove, and they remember. They remember. Look at 12:1. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth. So what he's saying is you were created. Everything you have has come from this Creator. If you think through your life, all the things that you have, from your breath to the provision of food, to the tires on your vehicle, they have come from your Creator. And remember Him. Remember to look over the sun, and he goes on, before the evil days come, and the years draw near, of which you will say, I have no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened, and the clouds return after the rain. In other words, church, the plane's falling. The final days of death are approaching, all of us. They're approaching. That the plane will crash and we will not survive the ultimate day of adversity. And so now he takes us on a journey, and the rest of 3-8 of this process of aging. He's going to use metaphors here. It's really amazing. Verse 3, in the day when the keepers of the house tremble. When they tremble, what's he talking about here? He's talking about the arms and the hands. And them shaking. And the strong men are bent. That's our legs. The strong men are our legs when we can no longer stand up. And the grinders cease because they are few. What's the grinders? Our teeth. They ultimately fall out. And those who look through the windows are dimmed. I wore my glasses today. Let's talk about the eyes. They grow dim. We lose our eyesight. Verse 4, and the doors on the house are shut. When the sound of the grinding is low. He's talking once again about the mouth, how our lips become perched and we don't talk much. One rises up at the sound of a bird. As we age, what happens? We tend to have an inability to sleep, that you can't sleep as long. Anyone testify? All the daughters of song are brought low. The volume on singing is brought low. What's he talking about there? Our hearing. Verse 5, they are afraid also of what is high, and the terrors are in the night. That is the fear of a fast world as we slow down. The almond tree blossoms. Our hair turns gray. The grasshopper, this figure of vitality, drags itself along. And desire fails. That's self-explanatory. And because man is going to his eternal home, and the mourners go about in the street before the silver cord is snapped. That's a referencing of the spinal cord. And the golden bowl is broken. That's the mind. We tend to become forgetful. Our mind begins to fail. Or the pitcher is shattered at the fountain. That's heart troubles. Or the wheel broken at the cistern. Ultimately, the blood stops flowing. In 7, and the dust returns to the earth as it was. And the spirit returns to God who gave it. Death. Ultimately, God will say, give me back my breath. And we will breathe out into dust. We will return. And Solomon in verse 8 says, vanity of vanities, says the preacher. All is vanity. Church, he ends this section. The final words from the preacher in this book, he ends it with how he began it. Why? Why does he have us focus on the coming day? So that we might remember our Creator. When? Today. And live in light that he is our God, and he has given us the gift of life and given us the gift of provisions in this life. Why? So that we might rest, that we might relinquish our lives unto him. Right? We have a king who came to die for us. It's the greatest provision ever. We have a king who blesses the land, who we get to worship day in and day out. He gives us good gifts. Church, I want to close this sermon by telling you a story about Johnny Cash. Hey, Johnny Cash, you could close your Bibles if you want. In 2002, Johnny Cash, he neared the end of his life. He would pass away in 2003. And one of the last songs that he recorded, it was a song covered song by a band named Nine Inch Nails, not a Christian band, but it was a song called Hurt. Maybe you've heard this. Here's some of the lyrics of that song. What have I become? My sweetest friend. Everyone I know goes away in the end. And you could have it all. My empire of dirt. I will let you down. I will make you hurt. If I could start again 1,000,000 miles away, I would keep myself. I would find a way. Church, why? Why in the world does Johnny Cash, of all the songs to cover this song as he nears the end of his life? I mean, he could have wrote his own song, couldn't he have? I mean, he was an accomplished musician, an accomplished songwriter. You can listen to this song, and it's sober and sad and honestly quite weird. But he gets these lyrics from his producer, and in reading them, he makes a decision. And he does something very, very, very intentional. He records a music video. And in this music video is the Johnny Cash Museum called the House of Cash. It's in Nashville. In the museum, it's filled with all of his awards, all of his accomplishments. It's framed records as guitars, pictures of sold-out concerts. It is, church, a monument of Johnny Cash's life. Yet, what you see in the video that he recorded is a sign that says closed to the public. Everything within the museum is dated. Or you would tell that there is no one that's been there in a while. There's broken pictures. Time has done its work. It's very clearly, church, a museum in honor of someone that no one wishes to honor anymore. And in his own museum, surrounded by his life's work, he begins to sing, "You can have it all. You can take my empire of dirt. It will let you down." In the video, he sits at an empty table all by himself as an old man. The table's full of food, but there's no one there to share it with him. All by himself as an old man, he sings, "Everyone I know goes away in the end." Throughout the video, you see these clips of a vibrant Johnny Cash on top of his game, singing the sold-out concerts, starring in movies. And then he immediately goes back to this old man sitting all by himself at a table who can't even lift his hands without shaking. He sings in that moment, "What have I become?" He looks around at all that he used to find so much meaning in, and he sings, "If I could start again 1,000,000 miles away, I'd keep myself, I'd find a way." And then towards the end of this video, something really interesting happens. In between all the images of Johnny Cash on top of his game and him shaking at the table, in between all of his awards and his life accomplishments, you get flashes of Jesus. Jesus on the cross, Jesus dying for the sins of the world. And they come out of nowhere, church. This is not a Christian song, but a man who became a Christian later in his life. Johnny Cash is making a point. He says, "My life's fading, my work is over. You can have my empire, all that matters in my life. Because all that lasts ultimately, church, is Jesus. His kingdom." Cash comes to grip with his own frailty. He comes to grip with the fact that his life is vanity, that it's a vapor, that it's fleeting. And he points away from all that's passing and points to something that will remain. His awards broken, his museum faded, his body weakened, and he says, "Let me leave you with a part of my life that will never go away. Let me show you a part of my life that will last." And once again, church, it's Jesus, the greater Solomon. And church, what Solomon's doing here throughout this whole book is inviting us to live life with the end in mind. Because living life with the end in mind makes us enjoy our lot all the more. All that will remain is Jesus and his kingdom. And so we live by his wisdom, understanding that we live in a world under the sun. And yet God has given us joy. He's given us the gift of his very Son, the greatest provision that this world has ever seen, so that me and you might rest and might relinquish our own lives. And in relinquishing our own lives, we would find life. And we rejoice in his cross. He's given us the power of his Spirit to remove vexation, to do away with sin, and to remember our Creator and rejoice all the days of our life. And so, church, here's my last question. Will you rejoice today? Will you choose to find life under the sun by seeing how God has worked within your life, all that he's given to you? May God be praised. And we rejoice in that he has given us power to worship him today. And so if you want to stand, we will respond to this, not with Johnny Cash, but with Come Thou Fount. Please stand as we sing hymn 35. Jesus, you are the King of kings and the Lord of lords, and we praise you. We thank you for the gifts that you have given us. God, help us to rest in our own lot, to relinquish our lives, to rejoice in what you have given us and this breath and this life under the sun. Help us to remove vexation from our lives and to remember you as our Creator. Give us your power now as we leave this place to scatter into our communities. And it's in your name, Jesus, that we pray. And all God's people said, amen. Church, I love you guys more than you know. You are dismissed.